by the millions. Semis crisscross a country with a perpetual craving for more. Daily deliveries of tons and tons of freight. The laws of science suggest once in motion, they will stay in motion.
My last memory, she was closing the door, the porch lights on, and I see her silhouette.
I think she's still gonna walk through that door.
Can you hear me? Yeah? Okay.
I couldn't touch you, Lisa. Your daughters are in a situation, you can't help them.
Yet what happens when laws go ignored?
They don't care about rules, they just care about dropping off the load and making that money.
Profit above people. Yeah, that's their main concern.
And I try to avoid the light.
The sound of the crashing of the semi, it's a sound you don't forget.
I'm afraid when I drive now, and I'm a truck driver.
For 1 year,
so they wouldn't actually be physically here.
Teams in Texas and Florida investigated a national problem.
What do you hope changes?
Could the accident have been prevented?
What they found, a lack of accountability.
There's multiple things that FMCSA could do, but they need authority. It's a multifaceted blame to go around.
It's a flaw in the system.
A system where too many risk too much to stay on roads we use daily.
There's a lot of companies cutting corners
on our roads with all their twists and turns. Our investigators found blind spots everywhere.
And they're out there on our roadways driving up to 80,000-pound tractor trailers, killing and injuring people.
It's mind-boggling what's overlooked.
It's a dangerous game of chance played daily on our interstates and highways.
You see them everywhere, commercial trucks, semis. Most are responsibly run. Most, but not all.
15 people die a day in semi-truck crashes. That's a 40% jump from 2013 to 2023.
And what we've uncovered over the past year tells us the system designed to protect us isn't working.
I'm Jennifer Titus from WTSP in Tampa, Florida.
And I'm Tanya Iser with WFA TV in Dallas, Texas.
We take you to a small town in Florida where the lives of an entire family were changed forever while out for a day of shopping.
They bring back great memories. Graduation day from Ocala Christian Academy in 1988. We graduated in, June? And got married in November.
In 1988, Mark and Elisa Dill made the kind of promise
There we are doing the cake.
couples tend to make.
My beautiful girl. You ready, my love?
In sickness and in health.
All right, my love.
Today, even with the latter in doubt.
2, 3. Okay. And sit on back. Okay.
That promise remains.
Okay, feet up. All right. Now we're back in. We could go out on the back porch. 37 years ago, it's hard to believe.
There's a multiple vehicle accident, including an 18-wheeler.
Hey, bud, try not to move too much, okay? You hear me? Hey, don't move so much. Don't move so much. Stay right where you're at. Ma'am, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yeah? Okay. Are you okay?
December 3rd, 2022, a semi-truck traveling from California to Florida with a load of grapes plowed into the back of the van filled with 4 generations stopped at a red light on US 27 in Groveland, Florida, near Orlando. Elisa's mom, Diane, was driving. Her sister, daughter, and granddaughter, all passengers.
And I wake up and I look at Christy and she's got her head hanging down and she has a little blood coming out of her mouth right here.
How are we doing in here, guys?
She's not responding to me.
Not responding?
Can you hear me?
Okay.
Can you squeeze
You know
my
where you're
hand?
at, ma'am?
Can you squeeze my hand? She's squeezing my hand.
No, what's your name, dear? Christine, okay.
All of them rushed by ambulance except Elisa. Injuries so severe, she had to be airlifted.
Then I found out later her extent of her injuries and it was pretty scary. I mean, here your daughters are in this situation, you can't help them. I couldn't hold them and hug them.
So I broke my back, like 9 broken ribs. I had a concussion, had a brain bleed. My legs were swollen. They're still very disfigured.
The most critically injured, Mark's wife of 37 years, Elisa.
She's considered quadriplegic.
It's you know, there's I don't know if you could actually say like worse things than dying, but this is a horrible. It's just awful.
The fight now for the Dill family isn't just to heal, but to expose what they say is the awful truth they've learned about the crash.
That's infuriating.
Yeah. This body cam video shows the driver of the crash, Rajvi Bagri, taking a drug test on scene. Florida Department of Law Enforcement records show he tested positive for morphine and meth. The state attorney's office told the Dill family's attorney that they were never referred a case from Groveland police.
We are now on the record, and the time is 10:14 a.m.
In a video deposition for the family's civil case, he refused to answer questions about the drug test, but he did admit he failed his written test for his commercial driver's license in English. He testified he didn't even fill out his own employment paperwork. A company, JST Truck Permits in Fresno, did even filled out his job application on November 28, 2022, 5 days before the Florida crash. Records show he was given a road test too.
Is any of this your handwriting?
ये रोड टेस्ट की जानकारी थे प्रवाई हैगी है इना जो ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਆਪਣੀ ਕੋਈ ਲਿਖਾਈ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ
नहीं जी
No, sir.
Even the date of the road test makes little sense. November 30th, 2022. Records show on the date he was supposed to be tested, he was already on the road, starting in California, Arizona, Texas, Georgia, before finally ending up in Florida's Lake County, the site of that horrible crash. Records also show that that load was supposed to have 2 drivers.
I was alone.
And it's 2,571.9 miles. You would agree that that cannot be run safely within the hours of service limits for a single driver, correct? It would require a team driver or team load. Agreed?
Hanji.
Yes.
Bagri was cited by Groveland police for careless driving and driving an unsafe vehicle and paid $282 in fines. He testified bad brakes could have been to blame.
Do you feel like the lack of braking systems from the trailer contributed to causing or the severity of this crash?
Hanji.
Yes, sir.
That truck was owned by Panu Brothers Trucking, owner Jaswinder Singh.
Are you familiar with the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations, sir?
No.
Do you know what the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations are?
No.
He testified in this March deposition with a translator that he used the same registration company, JST Truck Permits, to sign up and register the trucks and his drivers.
I did not fill any form. Whatever the form is filled, the GST filled the forms.
On their website, the company advertises that they can help you start your own trucking company. Singh testified the paperwork was in English, which he didn't understand, but they never translated what the paperwork actually said.
There's these companies out there that will help new trucking companies form. They're called compliance companies. And here there's one specifically set up for Punjabi-speaking people. It's a Punjabi-owned company. And they literally did everything for him. He said, they just said, sign here, sign here, sign here.
6 months later, in another deposition, after noting communication errors in the earlier deposition with the same translator, Singh changed his answer and said he did in fact understand the federal regulations.
Back on March 6, 2025, at the time of your deposition, you did not know the federal motor carrier safety regulations, correct?
ਜਿਹੜੇ ਮੈਂ ਹੁਣ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਜੀ ਇਹ ਤਾਂ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਸੀ. Which I said you right now that I knew that.
What you've testified to today is that you attempted to learn them after your deposition of March 6, 2025, correct?
Hanji. Yes.
If this guy doesn't even understand what the regulations are, none of these safety measures were in place.
Not a single one. And I would like to tell you this is the exception.
When we reached out to JST Truck Permits about the allegations made in the March deposition, their lawyer sent us this statement saying, Mr. Singh, the owner of Panu Brothers, testified at his September deposition that he, 1, read and understood all of the FMCSA paperwork that he executed, and 2, read, understood, and is familiar with all applicable FMCSA and USDOT regulations that apply to interstate motor carriers. It is Panu Brothers' responsibility to comply with all such regulations.
There's a lot of companies cutting corners and literally just starting trucking companies, signing the form, paying $300, getting insurance, and they're out there on our roadways driving up to 80,000-pound tractor trailers, killing and injuring people.
A startling trend among some new trucking companies, why some say it's so easy to start your own company, and what experts say needs to change coming up. Lawyer Joe Camerlengo represents the family in the Florida crash.
Deposition after deposition, fatal crash, serious crash after serious crash. These small companies have zero safety measures, and they're just signing the form.
We found the FMCSA often doesn't verify whether new entrant carriers are complying with federal regulations before their trucks hit the road. A new entrant carrier is basically a new trucking company that just started operating. For the first 18 months, they're supposed to be under extra federal scrutiny to make sure they're following the rules and operating safely.
I think some of this comes right back to the FMCSA's lap because it's too easy to get a DOT number. It's just too darn easy.
Trucking industry experts like Steve Bryan and longtime broker Brian Watt blame the lack of oversight for the problems we are seeing with new entrant carriers.
The Motor Carrier Deregulation Act of 1980 was designed to reduce the barriers to entry. They reduced the paperwork barriers, they reduced the financial barriers, they reduced the insurance barriers in order for a company to get started. It was all in an effort to make the highways more competitive. This was all part of the deregulation movement of 1980. What ended up happening is that so many carriers started getting into the business, the FMCSA got overwhelmed.
We uncovered a presentation from the FMCSA's 2024 Safety Research Forum showing new trucking companies are behind more deadly crashes every year. One slide points out that back in 2012, Congress ordered the agency to create a written proficiency exam for anyone applying to start a motor carrier. On the same slide, it says they are 10 years late meeting this requirement. We asked to speak with FMCSA Administrator Derek Bars, but we're told he isn't giving interviews at this time. How many years were you there for?
15.
15, okay. We did track down the FMCSA's former executive director and chief safety officer, Jack Van Steenberg.
The registration at FMCSA, quite frankly, is broke. It costs nothing to get a DOT number. It costs $300 to get an operating authority, which is the MC number.
As for the oversight of these new trucking companies,
there's not enough safety investigators to make the highway safe. There's only about 300 safety investigators throughout the country, and those safety investigators are responsible for the 800,000 motor carriers that are registered and active out there today.
Van Steenberg says he put the proficiency exam on the top of his priority list in 2022. He retired in 2023.
I know they didn't do it. I don't know where it is in the priority list of this administration.
She's going to be entrapped. I need to get to her. It's not stopped. So it just kept going through? Yeah. Couldn't stop? Yeah.
In the meantime, little has changed for the driver involved in that Florida crash. Bogri is still on the road. Besides the citations, no criminal charges were ever filed. Even the lawyer taking the deposition was startled to hear how this deposition started.
When you first logged in, when you first had the phone in your hand and logged in by video, you were driving a tractor down the highway. Yes?
Yes, I was driving. I was looking for an exit, so I'm sorry.
Do you understand how dangerous it is to drive down the interstate with a cell phone in your hand, pushing the keys to log into the link and looking at a video, sir?
Yes. Yes.
Jaswinder Singh is also driving a truck for his wife's company. She opened her own trucking company, GRD Truckers, Inc., after Panu Brothers lost its insurance because of the crash.
She's never done anything with trucking before. Literally, he just had his wife go sign the forms. That's the problem.
both 18. We're drinking fruit punch there, not wine. All right, let me grab your handle here.
Meanwhile, everything has changed for the Dills.
It really did. It was a horrible day. But she's still here.
It makes you angry, and you wonder, well, where's the justice in this?
Yeah.
He's taken so much.
Like, he still gets to live his life.
Yeah.
Nothing in his life changed.
This guy started his company with JST, signed it up, did nothing, caused a catastrophic crash that injured numerous people, including a quadriplegic, this family, and then shut the company down and opened it up under his wife's name using JST again. It's the absolute definition of a chameleon carrier.
Let's explain what a chameleon carrier is. It's a trucking company that shuts down after major safety problems. Think failed inspections, serious crashes, or losing its insurance. Then reappears under a new name. And yes, that's illegal under federal law.
And I found an example that shows exactly how this happens. First, a deadly wreck in Texas that killed 2 people, leading to another deadly crash in Wyoming, both tied to the same people, just under different names. It's just after 6 a.m., February 11, 2021, in Fort Worth, Texas.
There is still a concern, though, for that morning commute.
Black ice coats the roadway in the toll lanes of Interstate 35.
Holy
More than 130 cars collide.
Oh my God.
Tiffany Jarrett and Mike Wells are heading to work. They are the 125th and 126th cars in that pileup when a truck carrying a FedEx shipment plows into them. This was the aftermath. Jared's car and Wells's pickup crushed underneath the semi.
We saw all these vehicles and we saw the FedEx truck hanging over the edge.
You know, her friends meant a lot to her.
Her mother, Cindy Jared, was also heading to work. Both of them worked at a downtown courthouse.
The first thing that I noticed was I came in and my lead clerk says, "Hey, I didn't see Tiffany's car out there. Is she here?" And her direct supervisor, "Is Tiffany okay? She didn't show up for work today." And I grabbed my phone and I just rush out. I holler at my supervisor. I says, "Tiffany did not show up for work."
For hours, Jared's parents had no idea what had happened to her.
I remember getting the call and it came up on my screen, Tarrant County. Well, I work for Tarrant County, so I thought it was somebody from my work calling me. So I said, "Hey, this is Cindy." And they said, "This is so-and-so from the medical examiner. I have your daughter here with me." I just threw the phone and the kids just all gathered around me. I just kept saying, "No, no, no." And I felt like I was just going to pass out, so they helped me to the couch, and it was very unreal.
Does it feel real now?
It still hurts.
Cindy had to tell her granddaughter, Emery.
She said, "Grammy, I never thought at 11 years old I wouldn't have my mommy."
His wife called me and she's like, "Mikey did not make it to work."
Meanwhile, the Wells family spent the day calling hospitals and morgues trying to find him.
But as the day went into night, and his wife sat at home without any power, freezing, not knowing if her husband was dead or alive, we didn't get clarification until the next day that he had been actually killed in that accident. We knew it in our hearts.
That FedEx truck that crashed into Tiffany and Mike was actually moving its load illegally. FedEx uses brokers to move their freight. A broker hired Iso Rizzo to move that shipment, but the company handed it off to Simon Express without approval. It's called double brokering, and that's illegal.
It only gets caught most often when we have a wreck like this. And then there's an investigation as to, wait, why is this motor carrier hauling this particular load? They weren't authorized to do it. Somebody else was supposed to be hauling it. It's been passed off to somebody else.
The family settled lawsuits after the crash. Those lawsuits revealed how the truck got on the road and who was behind the companies.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. Iso Rizzo's owner, Umajan Kadyrov, testified he'd started the company less than a year before the crash. He said he bought an existing motor carrier registration from another trucker.
You set up your business out of your home.
Correct. And everything was ready just to operate.
Records show there wasn't a safety plan, and dispatch operations were based in another country, Uzbekistan.
There's no contract. There was no written contract.
You're basically delegating the operations of your business to a group of individuals who are in a foreign country that you have no real oversight over. It's a recipe for disaster.
6 months after the crash, Iso Rizzo shut down.
Mr. Kadyrov had testified under oath in our deposition over and over that he was not involved in any other trucking companies. You have no motor carrier authority, correct?
Correct.
But Kadyrov had set up another company in his wife's name.
How about Vanmar?
Vanmar, yes.
That's your wife's motor carrier,
Correct.
isn't it, sir?
Yes, she owns it, but different people run it.
Okay. Why in the world have you put this company under her name as opposed to your name?
I don't recall any specific or major reason, but I remember that we discussed with her, and she said if we can put under her name.
He simply put it under a straw name, and he admitted that he was the head of the operations running that trucking company. Clearly, he had shifted all resources over to Vanmar, and Vanmar was starting to build up as to a much larger trucking company.
So before the Fort Worth crash, he already had another company set up.
He sure did. And that company, Vanmar, at one point reported that they had more than 300 trucks and drivers. 2 years after that Fort Worth crash, one of the company's drivers was involved in a fatal wreck in Wyoming that killed an EMT. It's December 21st, 2022. Just after 4 a.m., the roads are icy near Rawlins, Wyoming. A pickup truck pulling a trailer has jackknifed across I-80. Dashcam video from a semi shows it hitting the trailer.
And he couldn't brake, and then he smacked into the trailer.
Brian Perez was a passenger in the semi.
And the state trooper arrived, and then the ambulance, they parked like right there in the front left.
EMT Tyler Harris and another EMT had arrived at the scene.
The ambulance comes out, EMT, they're like, oh, you guys need any like medical attention or anything? And I was like, no, I'm okay. They had to get like equipment, something like that, I think. And they were, as soon as they were walking in, they went inside to grab. And I think that's when the truck started like coming at full speed.
Dashcam video from that first semi captured what happened next. The 18-wheeler smashed into the back of the ambulance.
Like really aggressively, like at a really high speed, and I was really close to it, and I could also got killed by it. Yeah.
The impact killed Harris and left another EMT severely injured.
I got a phone call. My alarm hadn't even went off that morning, and I got a phone call stating that at that time they didn't tell me which EMT that was on that crew had been killed.
EMTs Shayna Romero and Kyle Warren worked with Tyler.
It didn't feel real when we walked into the ER that day. The first thing that I stopped to think about was his kids.
It was awful. He was so young family. I feel like Tyler was meant for EMS.
Tyler's funeral was more than a service. It was a community coming together to grieve one of their own. While Tyler's friends and family were mourning, investigators were looking into the man behind the wheel of that semi.
You driver of this? Yes.
He was a rookie driver named Saviel St. Jean. He'd just gotten his commercial driver's license that year in Florida, and he was working for Vamar.
Can you tell me what happened?
And I tried to avoid the light, and I go straight to the ambulance. Tried to reduce the speed and stop the car, but it was too late. It was too late.
Okay. Is there anything else that you can think of that I haven't asked that you want to tell me?
The only thing I can say, sir, is that I'm sorry for being in that situation. I'm very sorry for what happened to me.
Well, I would tell you that there is a death. Okay.
Before or
I don't know. That's what we're trying to figure out.
In 2025, a jury found St. Jean guilty of vehicular homicide, aggravated assault, and not moving over for an emergency vehicle. He faces up to 30 years in prison.
They're massive, and you don't realize the kind of damage that they can do.
It's also put a lot of fear responding to those highway crashes. I can't say that there's not a single crash that goes by that I don't think about Tyler.
Records show Vamar was involved in at least 2 more fatal crashes. In 2025, the company lost its insurance, effectively shutting it down.
It's just repeating history over and over again.
Could the accident in Wyoming have been prevented?
Absolutely. If there was a better system in place to track not just the companies, but the people, the leadership, and the ownership behind these trucking companies, then yes, that could have been prevented.
Attorney Jason Stevens represented the Jared family in the Fort Worth case.
In the case that I was handling with regard to that wreck is there was 2 Chameleon carriers that we were dealing with there.
Iso Rizzo had all the classic signs of a Chameleon carrier, but there was another company tied to that Fort Worth crash, Simon Express.
And when we looked up Simon Express, we found it operating out of Orlando. So that's when we headed down I-4 and we found similar red flags.
Hello, my friends. My name is Tim Mirzaev.
Timur Mirzaev boasts of owning numerous trucking companies.
I have an extensive experience in transportation industry and managing trucking companies.
He's a self-styled trucking entrepreneur.
I have combined the best work practices I learned in the field.
After the Fort Worth crash, the family sued all the trucking companies involved. The company that hired the driver was Mirzaev's, a carrier called Simon Express. But that wasn't his first company. He started Davis Cargo in 2016 out of this Orlando office. In 2019, federal regulators audited Davis Cargo and found safety problems, fining the company more than $14,000.
Got in trouble with the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, got a conditional rating, lost business, closed up shop, went over here and started up another trucking company.
Davis Cargo went out of business that same year. Mirzaev then bought 2 new trucking companies, basing them in the same Orlando office where he'd operated Davis Cargo. He renamed them Energy Trucking and Simon Express, but never changed the DOT numbers for either one. If you hire a company to haul freight, you look up their DOT number. That's connected to their insurance, inspections, and crash history.
But if a company changes its name without changing its DOT number, that's a problem, like giving a repeat offender a new name and letting them go back on down the road.
Look closely at that truck in the Fort Worth crash. That number connects to everything: inspections, insurance, crash history, all of it. Look closely at the truck. The door says Energy Trucking, but on the cab you'll see Simon Express and their DOT numbers.
He's running 2 different trucking companies all in the same office. The same people from Energy were handling the same things for Simon.
Okay. Good morning, we're on the record.
Mirzaev used an interpreter during a 2024 deposition.
Simon или solicitali Energy Tracking?
Energy Tracking and Simon Express had the same team.
Mirzaev testified that employees of Energy Trucking ran Simon Express, and Energy Trucking paid Simon Express drivers. In September 2020, federal regulators warned Simon Express about serious safety problems, flagging significant non-compliance for unsafe driving. In the months that followed, Simon Express drivers crashed 4 times on icy roads. One of them, the Fort Worth pileup that killed Tiffany Jarrett and Mike Wells. The driver in that crash had only been a truck driver for 16 months. He'd taken a 3-week driving school in Florida. Here he is testifying in a deposition.
They do any kind of, quote, road test with you? No. He had been involved in a wreck just 2 months before in icy road conditions. And so you can start to see these patterns of conduct where history just repeats itself.
But Simon Express apparently had no idea. The driver left that earlier crash off his application, and records indicate the company didn't check his driving history until after the fatal crash.
With Simon Express, I had big plans, but after this wreck, it seemed unreasonable to invest into this.
But Mirzayev didn't shut the company down willingly. In reality, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration shut down Simon Express in October 2021 following the Fort Worth crash. The other company, Energy Trucking, was not shut down. The FMCSA did not explain when we asked them about it. In fact, it kept operating for another 3.5 years before it lost its insurance in 2025.
It's a whack-a-mole game. It needs to stop. We need the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration to get more heavily involved. When you let trucking companies play musical chairs with just the name of the company, you're losing accountability, and the public is paying for that.
We found truck cabs outside this Orlando business office labeled Energy Trucking, inside a directory where it shows Energy Trucking on the 2nd floor. When we went inside the office, lights were on and a key card with the name Timur, but it looked like nobody was there. We did see another sign on the wall for Truck Staff Solutions, another company Mirzayev owns. On the company's website, it says they're based in Pennsylvania. It promises customers they can receive a fully established business entity, including all legal and administrative work completed, allowing you to hit the ground running. One of its investors sued this year, alleging they were creating and selling Chameleon carriers.
We have bought and sold numerous amounts of numbers.
That practice is at the heart of what federal investigators have warned about for years. According to a 2012 Government Accountability Office report, motor carriers with chameleon attributes were not only increasing nationwide, but were also 3 times as likely to be involved in severe crashes. The report found that the FMCSA's investigative programs weren't well designed to identify suspected chameleon carriers. In response, the FMCSA told Congress it would step up efforts to stop chameleon carriers.
They are supposed to report the fact that they are a reincarnated company, and because that means their safety scores in the investigation will follow them, and they don't get to put it behind them. So if we get aware of that, we can actually report that to the FMCSA to say, this is a chameleon carrier. We've done that before. They don't do anything. It just takes, we've never seen one of those reports pan out and shut a company down.
More than a decade later, with new changes in place, our investigation found the problem persists. Tiffany Jarrett's bedroom remains mostly unchanged.
We're not ready to give her up yet.
Ready. We're not ready.
So is her parents' grief.
For some odd reason, I think she's still going to walk through that door.
I play the if game a lot.
Families across the country still paying the price because every time one of these companies slips through the cracks, another life lost on America's roads.
Zabar, he was a rapper. He was on stage with Evan and Kaysen, and he was rapping about Jesus. They kind of look up to their dad as being a leader. My daughter is kind of quiet. She just sit back and direct.
All that's left for Anthony Epperson are memories. His son-in-law, Zabar, his daughter, Krishan, and his grandson, Kason.
And they had just left a memorial for his dad's family member, and they were on their way back to Fort Worth.
They were among the 5 people killed June 28, 2025, when an 18-wheeler crashed into their car in Terrell, Texas. Zabar's father died too.
I think they got held in a traffic jam, and this guy came plowing and ran into the rear of them and crushed them. That was, I'm a truck driver. I would never do that. You're talking about an 80,000-pound truck running into them at a standstill. That's a freight train.
And then you find out about your granddaughter.
Yes, when I found out about Evan, she survived. That was very happy. It was heartwarming that one person survived.
The 20-year-old college student lost her foot.
I was happy that she don't remember that accident.
Sometimes that's God's grace.
Yes, it is. I think it is.
The driver told investigators he fell asleep at the wheel, and federal records show he was cited for 7 violations, all for his driving hours. He's in jail facing charges of manslaughter and aggravated assault. But this wasn't about one apparently exhausted driver. The company he worked for displayed a pattern of pushing drivers past federal drive time limits. That company was Hope Trans.
The whole family died needlessly.
John Nahinik represents Epperson.
There are so many issues with the company, their safety record. It's a matter of time before this happens.
Hope Trans was hired to haul the shipment for the post office. The truck began its journey at a postal distribution center outside Atlanta. Its next stop, Irving, Texas. That route from Atlanta to Irving spans 800 miles. Postal rules are clear. Team drivers are required for trips over 500 miles. In this case, the driver was alone when the crash happened.
My heart just kind of dropped, like, man, that could have been me.
This truck driver used to work for Hope Trans. He asked us to conceal his identity.
There was just so many red flags.
The truck driver provided us messages with company dispatchers, including records from a postal service run he took from Atlanta to Phoenix.
They pressured me into this load. I next day shipped it from Atlanta all the way to Phoenix off of 3 hours of sleep.
By federal law, truckers can't drive more than 11 hours a day. Then they must take a 10-hour break.
You message this log company on Telegram telling them, hey, I need more hours. Here they come sending you a bill of lading that's been edited to match those new logs.
Here's the bill of lading, which is the contract for the load. It shows the departure date was backdated as well, from June 9th to June 8th.
I could have quit. I could have said no. I was one paycheck loss away from my wife and kids losing our house.
He and another former Hope Trans trucker also provided us this message, instructing drivers to hide any original paperwork and noting that showing the original document can lead to a major violation. Federal records show Hope Trans drivers were repeatedly cited for driving beyond the 11-hour driving limit.
They don't care about rules, they just care about dropping off the load and making that money.
The other Hope Trans trucker says there was a code for asking for more drive time.
All I had to say was I need a cup of coffee, and they would give me more time.
It really gets my blood boiling for this family, because if they were doing that, if Hope was doing that, they for sure didn't belong on the road.
At the time of the crash, Hope Trans listed a Tacoma address in federal records. But that address, a co-working space. When our sister station in Seattle showed up a few days after the crash, staff said the company only got mail there. They didn't actually work there. When a trucking company registers, it's required to list a principal place of business. That means a real physical address, not just a mailbox or P.O. box. It's supposed to be where driver and safety records are kept and where federal inspectors can show up unannounced to check those records.
And so it all kind of ties together.
Del Prax owns Freight Validate, a company that tracks fraud and identity theft in trucking.
I'm not saying that everybody that has a mailbox address is a bad guy, even though it's non-compliant. But I'll tell you, a huge percent of the people that are bad guys have those kind of addresses.
Take a look at this quiet building in Signal Hill, California. It doesn't look like the headquarters of hundreds of trucking companies, right?
It's the registered physical address of over 600 trucking companies, and it has been for a long, long time.
In fact, roughly 500 of those companies listed the same email, WTF FMCSA at AOL.com.
Shut them down tomorrow. Make them explain that. That's not proper.
We also found 20 trucking companies registered to this building on West Commerce Street in Dallas, a virtual mailbox spot called physicaladress.com. For as little as $8 a month, anyone can set up shop here. No truck required. So they wouldn't actually be physically here?
No, they would not be working here physically, no.
So if like the federal government wanted to come check records for that company or any of those companies, they wouldn't come here?
No.
It's a lack of enforcement. It's simply a lack of enforcement. It's sort of like having mice in the house. If you're not going to try and get rid of them, well, they grow.
And 2 days after that deadly crash killed 5 people in Terrell, Texas, federal records show Hope Trans's address suddenly changed.
That co-working space in Washington State changed to an apartment complex in Orlando. Which led us back on I-4 to that apartment complex where no one answered the door. But we did find this business card from an FMCSA investigator looking for the same people we were. Have you ever seen the name Hope Trans LLC at all?
No. Oh, that's a name you can remember, no.
We then headed to another address we found tied to Hope Trans. When we got to the business complex, the unit was locked.
B-Zone Logistics.
And on the door, an eviction notice for a company called B-Zone Logistics. At the time of that crash in Texas, the owner of Hope Trans was listed as Aisha Magomedova. The owner's husband was tied to B-Zone Logistics and another company, Cardan Trucking, both with troubled safety histories. All of them had used the same Orlando address.
That one was an absolute textbook case of, we'll call it a chameleon.
A former driver snapped a photo of his company fuel card. The name on it? B-Zone Logistics.
B-Zone, I was like, why? What is B-Zone? It was a red flag.
Federal inspection records compiled by Blue Wire show a clear pattern of chameleon carrier activity. Trucks first ran under Cardan, then B-Zone, and now Hope Trans. 45 trucks showed up with at least 2 of the companies, 11 with all 3.
It was like a light switch got flipped. Those VIN numbers then started appearing in the inspections and crash reports for a different DOT number. It was an absolute deliberate, evasive maneuver to take their existing fleet and just move it into a new DOT number and just keep on operating.
In 2023, Cardan Trucking shut down after federal regulators issued a notice to revoke its license after 2 deadly crashes in Iowa. Inspection records show B-Zone drivers repeatedly violated federal hours of service rules. At the end of 2024, the company lost its insurance and could no longer legally operate.
Hope Trans operated for more than 3 months after that crash. During that time, the company racked up dozens of violations all across the United States.
And FMCSA didn't immediately shut them down,
even though they have a tool that they could have used to do it. It's called an imminent hazard order. Over the last decade, it's been used around 30 times. In 2019 and 2020, it was 0.
It's used very sparingly.
Is that acceptable?
From a safety expert, absolutely not. It's not being used enough to put bad actors, pull their authority, and park their trucks.
And why is that?
And why is that? Bureaucracy and politics.
It feels kind of like FMCSA is not using the tools that it has.
A lot of that changes with the administration that's in. Some are more motor carrier friendly, some are, more a little bit more stricter on the regulation. I think we should be using a lot more of that imminent hazard authority against unsafe motor carriers.
Whose fault is it? It feels broken to me, so is there somebody we should point the finger at? I mean, is it?
I mean, I was there in 23, you can point the finger at me. It is FMCSA's responsibility and mission to prevent these type of crashes. You get motor carriers that are hiring some of these drivers that are unsafe. You get the political people, and I'm not a political person, whether you're Republican or Democrat. They kick the can down the road. They're really good at that. It's a multifaceted blame to go around. I look at it as everybody's responsible.
Still ahead, why experts say changes at the federal level and even giving states more power could be a game changer at making our roads safer.
Experts we've spoken to say enough is enough. It's time for real change before more lives are lost.
You see it in these photos, hear it in their voices.
This is what can happen also.
Families' lives changed forever.
It is a split second and everything in your world changes.
But what we've uncovered, the crashes could have been avoided.
If the system actually worked.
No accountability, no safety measures, and they take everything from you.
With thousands of new carriers hitting the road every month.
The federal government can't keep up.
What do you hope changes or will change?
Well, if the federal government can't take on the trucking companies, then perhaps the states can.
This is happening all over the nation.
The patterns are the same.
Different states,
different families,
same failures.
One of the problems, starting a trucking company,
it's almost frighteningly simple.
The registration at FMCSA, quite frankly, is broke.
And once a company's up and running, the feds don't sufficiently monitor them.
The real tool they have is what's called a compliance review. And out of that comes a safety rating. The problem we have is close to 90% of the entire trucking industry is unrated.
Without those reviews, no one is really checking to see if they have a real office or a safety plan at all.
What we need to do is change the regulations to where you cannot operate a motor carrier unless you have had a safety audit, and you have to pass every freaking category in the safety audit.
And until problems are fixed,
the cost of inaction falls on families like these.
I mean, it's just, that took so much away from us.
But I got so choked up because it could have happened 4 years ago and it would still be here.
Lives continue to be changed forever.
What are you fighting for?
Justice for Emery, justice for Tiffany.
We just want to see laws put in place.
Yes.
Where these semis can't do what they did.
The trucks keep rolling, the crashes keep happening, and the question remains,
when will the system finally catch up?